back in the workroom today, not with the Baltika, not with the Vyacheslav Molotov, but with VT509, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I had a fantastic day yesterday. Don't get me wrong, this is the Baltika and this is the Molotov. Fantastic day yesterday. I got a little bit of correspondence from a gentleman by the name of Ruud van der Sluis. He's the director of an online museum dedicated to the Netherlands Dock and Shipbuilding Company. That is the company that built the vessel initially. And he sent me a series of photographs of her under construction, some photos of individual pieces of deck equipment, and a fantastic deck plan from which I learned a lot. And the most important thing I learned is this particular model does not depict the vessel as a passenger liner, but it depicts her as she was between 1941 and 1944, when she was first a transport and then a stationary hospital ship during the blockade of Leningrad. So was she built for the Soviet military? That I still don't know, but it gets more and more fascinating, and that explains perhaps why inside she is filled with operating rooms and doctor's quarters and dormitories and recovery rooms and not passenger accommodations. I learned also that this ship initially was built by a master model maker. When you compare the fittings that are there, and even the ones that aren't, to the deck plan, everything is precisely placed exactly as it was. And because of that, I was able to identify, using the plans, all but one fitting on this vessel. But the one thing that tells me this was built by a master model maker is this. This is a lifeboat davit, and I know you can't see it clearly in the long shot. I'll put a close-up in, but this has a little hand crank. It's a perfect miniature of the actual davit, but the one thing that really gives it away is down at the bottom of this davit, the pivot actually functions. Even though the davit itself is soldered into place, it can't move. So you ask, well, why would you make a functioning pivot if the davit isn't going to move? Well, that is what tells me this was done by someone who knew what they were doing. If you were making 20 pieces like this by hand, there's going to be some slight variation from piece to piece. It's inevitable. And an inexperienced model maker will make their 20 pieces, install them on the model, and then realize, you know, these don't quite align, do they? But if you make a functioning pivot and you don't solder the last point, you can install the davits on the model. You can make slight adjustments to each one till they're perfectly lined up, then go in and solder that point, and there you have it. Master model maker, you've got to know, you've got to have the foresight and the experience to know to do that. It wasn't an accident, which puzzles me when I look at this, which is one of her mushroom vents. Whoever made this knew nothing about shipbuilding, knew nothing about ventilators. I suppose they did know about mushrooms because they tapered it from the bottom to the top. And they gave her a dome cap, which if you looked at any photograph or plan or anything of the vessel, you know that's not the way they were. Also, the paint is different from these vents to some of the earlier parts. So all I can come up with is that initially, this vessel was beautifully modeled, bow to stern, with amazing fittings, all to the quality of these lifeboat davits, and that sometime in her history, her very nice winches and ventilators and her helm and binnacle and all of those other parts were cannibalized for another model, and then this ended up in someone else's hands who wanted desperately to bring her back, but just did not have the skill to do it. So it's a bit of a dilemma, because I know I said in an earlier video that you should never upgrade or improve a model. But what you can do as a restorer is select a point in her history to restore her to. So I am going to choose to bring her back to the time in her history when she was fully finished with beautiful fittings. And you know, the more I learn about this model, the more exciting it becomes. Fabrication is getting closer. Now I've got everything identified. I can properly scale it. I can obtain parts that are available, and she'll be on her way back soon. So stay with me. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.